The seed, the harvest, and the presence of God. Hello there. Welcome to another episode of the Sanctuary Podcast. Today we are going to look into a moment of breakthrough, a divine intersection where work meets worship. Our focus is on 1 Samuel chapter 6 and verse 13, and we are calling this episode The Seed, the Harvest, and the Presence of God. The scripture from 1 Samuel chapter 6 verse 13 reads, "The people of Beth-Shemesh were harvesting their wheat in the valley. When they looked up and saw the chest, they were so happy that they stopped working and started celebrating." In this episode, we'll explore the history and significance of the wheat harvest, the meaning behind Beth-Shemesh, and how the seed, the harvest, and the presence of God come together in this lovely scene, this beautiful scene of celebration. In the scripture, 1 Samuel chapter 6 and verse 13, we find the people of Beth-Shemesh in the midst of a wheat harvest. The wheat harvest was a vital time in the life of the community. It marked the end of a long growing season and represented the provision of God, the sustenance that would carry them through. But before we speak about the harvest, let's consider the seed once again, the beginning of it all. The seed represents potential. It holds within it the promise of what is to come. It requires effort. A farmer plants a seed in hope, waters it in faith, and waits in expectation. The wheat harvest in particular was crucial in ancient Israel. It typically happened in the late spring or early summer, around the time of the Feast of Weeks or Pentecost, a festival that celebrated the first fruits of the harvest. The word harvest comes from the Old English word harvest, meaning autumn or time of gathering crops. In the Hebrew context, the harvest was more than just an agricultural event. It was a symbol of God's blessing, a symbol of His provision and the reward for their labor. The wheat harvest was also a time of communal activity. Everyone in the village was involved. It was hard work, but it was meaningful because it represented survival and blessing. The name Beth-Shemesh comes from two Hebrew words, Beth or Beit meaning house and Shemesh meaning sun. Therefore, Beth-Shemesh means house of the sun. This was a Levitical city, a place designated for the priests of God, and was located in the territory of Judah. It was a place known for worship and service to the Lord. It's interesting to note that the house of the sun was where God chose to reveal His glory through the return of the Ark of the Covenant, the box that is spoken of in 1 Samuel chapter 6, or the chest that is spoken of in 1 Samuel chapter 6 verse 13. So this Beth-Shemesh, or the house of the sun, was this place that God chose to reveal His glory through the return of the Ark of the Covenant. And the people of this place, house of the sun, were busy with their everyday lives, working hard in the valley, harvesting their wheat. It's possible that while they were reaping the physical harvest, there was a sense of routine, perhaps maybe even a weariness. The harvest was there, but the true rejoicing was not. The ark, the representation of God's presence, was absent. The people were going through the motions, laboring without the sense of God's nearness. Now imagine this. They are in the valley, gathering wheat, the heat of the sun beating down on them, when suddenly they look up and see the Ark of the Covenant coming toward them. The ark, which had been in the hands of the Philistines, was now returning. This was not just any box. It was the very symbol of God's presence, His covenant, and His glory among His people. When they saw it, the people of Beth-Shemesh stopped what they were doing. The harvest could wait for now. They had something greater, the presence of the living God. There's something so profound here. The people were in the midst of their work, but when they saw the ark, they stopped and celebrated. The wheat harvest was important, yes, but the presence of God was everything. This moment really teaches us that while the seed is necessary and while the harvest is the reward of the labor, it is ultimately the presence of God that brings true joy and fulfillment. The harvest, the seed, and God's presence are intricately connected. The seed is our act of faith. It's what we plant in hope, trusting that God will provide the increase. The harvest is the manifestation of God's blessing. It's what we gather after the waiting, after the labor and the watering. But the presence of God is what turns our work into worship. The people of Beth-Shemesh could have continued working, but they recognized that the return of the ark was a divine moment. It was a God moment, a reason to stop and rejoice. The relationship between the seed, the harvest, and the presence is a reminder that our labor, whether in the field, in our workplaces, or in our homes, our labor takes on its true meaning only in the light of God's presence. Without Him, the harvest might be gathered, but it lacks the joy of His touch. His presence turns our work into a joyful celebration. As the scripture says in Psalm 127 and verse 1, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Today, let's take a moment to acknowledge God's presence in our lives. Let's not get so caught up in our work, in our gathering of the harvest, that we miss the glory of His presence passing by. Let's remember that it is He who gives the seed, it is He who brings the harvest, and it is He who turns our work into worship. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Remember, the seed is planted in faith. The harvest is gathered with effort, but it is the presence of God that brings true celebration. Until next time, stay blessed and keep celebrating His presence. This is Gregory Berry, and you've been listening to the Sanctuary Podcast. Blessings to you all.